I will never forget that moment. It was my father's birthday and the house was full of family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, and close family friends. Everyone was laughing, eating good food, and having a great time. The birthday cake was beautiful, the decorations were bright and cheerful, and the atmosphere was warm and happy. I was standing in the middle of the room, laughing at a funny story my cousin was telling when it happened. My father walked toward me with a strange look on his face. Before I could understand what was happening, his hand came up fast and struck my cheek hard. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Everyone went silent. Forks stopped moving halfway to people's mouths. Even the candles seemed to flicker in shock. My father smiled that cruel smile and said, "Maybe this will remind you who is in charge." I felt my face burning, not just from the physical pain, but from the shame and humiliation. Everyone in the room had seen it. My own father had hit me in front of all these people, and he did it like it was nothing, like it was his right. The anger started to build inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I forced myself to smile and pretend it did not hurt. That was the moment I decided, not to fight back immediately, not to yell or cry or run away. No, I decided to wait. I decided to watch. I decided to remember everything. After the slap, I ran upstairs to my room. My cheek was red and swollen, but that pain was nothing compared to what I felt in my heart. Sitting on my bed, I could hear my aunt and cousin talking downstairs. They were whispering about money. They were talking about inheritance. They were talking about who would get what when my grandmother passed away. They were talking about my father like he was already gone, already finished. That is when I understood something important. The slap was not random. It was not just my father being angry. It was part of something bigger. There was a silent war happening in my family, and I had not even noticed. Everyone was fighting for money, for power, for control. My father was fighting to keep his position at the top. My aunts and uncles were fighting to get more than their share. My cousins were fighting to please the people who could leave them money. And my father had hit me right in the middle of this hidden battlefield to show everyone that he was still in charge, to show everyone that he was still the strongest, to show everyone that no one could challenge him. But now I knew the truth, and now I was ready to watch, to listen, to remember. At the next family gathering, I decided to do something different. I decided to act normal. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I laughed when everyone else laughed. I nodded politely when my father talked about his business success and made fun of my ideas. But inside, I was watching everything. I started writing things down in a small notebook that I kept hidden. Every time my father told a lie, I wrote it down. Every time he said something that contradicted what he said before, I noted it. Every time he bragged about money or power, I recorded it. I watched my cousins exchange quick looks, small nods, secret smiles. I could see the network forming. I could see who was on whose side. I could see who was trying to get close to my father for money and who was secretly hoping he would fail. My mind was becoming sharp. I was learning to see patterns. I was learning that every word could be important. Every gesture could mean something. Every small action could be part of a bigger plan. I kept my face calm. I kept my voice quiet. But inside, I was building a map of my family, showing me where everyone stood and what they wanted. No one noticed that I was changing. No one saw that I was no longer the naive, innocent person they thought I was. A week later, my mother approached me. She was being very sweet and very gentle, which made it worse somehow. She said I was overreacting to the slap. She said my father had only been trying to teach me a lesson. She said I should just forget about it and move on. Her voice was soft and kind, but her words were telling me that I was wrong for being upset. That was when I understood another important thing. My mother was trying to make me doubt what had happened. She was trying to make me think that the pain was not real, that the humiliation was not real, that my anger was not real. The word for this is gaslighting, and it is a form of emotional abuse. They were all doing it together. My mother, my father, maybe others too. But I was ready for it. I nodded and smiled and told her she was right. But inside, I was thinking clearly. I was not going to let them change my mind. I was not going to let them make me think I was crazy for knowing the truth. I had been hit in front of everyone. I had seen it. I knew it happened. And no one was going to make me believe otherwise. During the next few weeks, I started paying attention to the family group chat. At first, it seemed normal, just jokes and updates about family events. But then I started seeing patterns. Certain cousins were sending private messages to certain aunts. Certain uncles were having side conversations about business deals. There were jokes with hidden meanings, comments that seemed innocent, but actually contained criticism aimed at me or at others. I spent hours mapping out who talked to whom, who trusted whom, who was trying to get close to my father, and who was secretly hoping he would fall. It was like a game of chess, and everyone was making moves without realizing that I was watching the whole board. I noticed strange financial patterns. There were accounts I had never heard of, and transfers that seemed odd. My father was hiding something. One day, he left a financial document on his desk while bragging to my uncle about manipulating the family estate. I read every word and discovered he had been stealing from the family for years, taking money meant for my grandmother's grandchildren. I went to my room and wrote everything down. This was the proof I needed. Over the next several months, I developed a careful strategy. I would be patient, gather more evidence, and wait for the right moment. At family dinners, I watched him dominate conversations and mock me, but I could see people were uncomfortable with his behavior. While cleaning the attic, I found old letters from my grandmother showing this favoritism had been happening for generations. This meant my father had learned this behavior from his own family, built on a foundation of deception. My plan had many parts. First, I submitted some questions to the family lawyer about property ownership. I pretended to be curious and innocent, like I was just asking because I did not understand something. But really, I was triggering an investigation. The lawyer started looking at the documents more carefully. He started asking questions. My father did not realize what was happening. He thought it was just casual interest. Second, I sent a vague message to one of my cousins, dropping hints about my father's dishonesty. I knew this cousin would tell others. I knew rumors would spread. And I was right. Within days, my father started acting nervous. He started questioning his own allies. He started worrying about who knew what. His arrogance had made him blind to my strategy. Third, I made sure that recordings of my father's conversations started circulating. I had recorded him bragging about the stolen money. I had recordings of him mocking me. I had recordings of his lies. And slowly, I let people hear these recordings. Not all at once. Not in an obvious way. But enough that people started to understand who my father really was. As time went on, things started to change. Some family members began to realize that I knew more than they thought I did. They started to see that my father was not as honest and trustworthy as they had believed. And they started to choose my side instead of his. I never pushed them directly. I never said, "You should believe me," instead of him. But I let them make their own discoveries. I let them see the evidence with their own eyes. I let them reach their own conclusions. And one by one, people who had been loyal to my father started to turn away from him. My father, meanwhile, was becoming more paranoid and more desperate. He started making mistakes. He started trying to destroy documents. He started attempting to manipulate witnesses. He was panicking, and panic makes people sloppy. Every desperate move he made was actually evidence of guilt. One day, the family lawyer called a formal meeting. My father was expecting it to be about routine business, but I was there and I had brought all my evidence. I had brought the recordings. I had brought the documents. I had brought the witnesses. And I calmly, carefully presented everything. I showed the family the stolen money. I showed them the hidden accounts. I showed them the manipulated documents. I showed them how much money was missing from the family estate. I showed them the recordings of my father boasting about how he had stolen it all. And as I presented each piece of evidence, I watched my father's face. I watched his confidence disappear. I watched his arrogance crumble. I watched him realize that he had been outsmarted, that he had been caught, that his life was about to change forever. The lawyer immediately started legal proceedings. Within weeks, my father had lost control of the family estate. The stolen money was recovered. His inheritance was reduced. His business reputation was damaged. He had to pay back money to the family. He faced potential criminal charges. Everything he had built was falling apart. I did not feel happy about my father's downfall. I did not celebrate. I did not gloat or laugh or feel satisfied in a triumphant way. Instead, I felt something deeper. I felt that justice had been done. I felt that the truth had won. I felt that my family could now move forward without being poisoned by his lies and his greed. My father avoided eye contact with me after that. He never apologized. He never admitted he was wrong. But he also never hit me again. He never tried to gaslight me again. He lost his power over me and over the family. The family dynamic slowly began to heal. People started to trust each other again. People started to work together instead of against each other. The hidden war was over. The secrets had been revealed. The truth had been spoken. The real victory was not that my father fell. The real victory was that I learned something important about myself and about the world. I learned that patience is more powerful than anger. I learned that evidence is stronger than emotion. I learned that silence can be louder than screaming. I learned that a person who remains calm and observant and strategic can accomplish things that a person who acts on impulse and emotion never can. I also learned that revenge, when it comes, should not come from hate. It should come from a commitment to truth. It should come from a desire to protect the innocent. It should come from the understanding that sometimes the best way to win is to simply let the truth speak for itself. My father's slap on his birthday was the beginning of my journey. That moment of pain and humiliation was what woke me up. It was what made me decide to stop being naive and start being strategic. And in the end, it was that moment that led to his downfall. Not because I was cruel or vindictive, but because I was patient, smart, and committed to uncovering the truth. Now, when I sit in family gatherings, there is a different feeling. There is honesty. There is respect. There is peace. The person who sits at the head of the table is different now. My father is humbled. He is careful. He knows that his actions have consequences. And I, the person who was slapped and gaslit and doubted, have become someone different too. I have become someone who others listen to. Someone who others respect. Someone who knows the power of patience and evidence and truth. The slap that happened on my father's birthday was meant to hurt me and humiliate me and remind me of his power. But in the end, it taught me that real power comes from knowledge. Real power comes from strategy. Real power comes from truth. And no one can ever take that away from me.